Meteor. 1979 wasn't just a disaster movie. It was a disaster. 3 separate special effects teams were hired and fired before the film reached theaters. The Hong Kong tidal wave was shot in Los Angeles using cardboard buildings, and the mud sequence nearly killed Sean Connery, buried Karl Malden twice, and almost sucked Natalie Wood into a pump.
And the President has returned the control of this center to me.
Today, we're uncovering 14 hidden truths about the film that helped end the golden age of Hollywood disaster movies, including the real reason its effects look so bad, the Cold War miracle hiding inside its casting, and the woman on set who spoke Russian better than the script did. 1. The Cold War miracle. 1979. The Cold War at full temperature. The United States and the Soviet Union pointing nuclear weapons at each other from orbit. And then there was this movie. Meteor was one of the first major American blockbusters to put American and Soviet scientists in the same room, working as equals, saving the world together. No villain on either side, no ideology winning. Just 2 superpowers admitting that some problems are bigger than politics. Sean Connery and Brian Keith played their opposite numbers with genuine warmth. The dynamic between them, 2 stubborn scientists who respect each other immediately, gave the film its only real emotional core. In a Hollywood still fighting the Cold War on screen, it was quietly radical. The idea that the Americans and Soviets needed each other wasn't a plot device. For this film, it was the entire point. 2. Natalie Wood's secret weapon. The writers gave the Soviet characters Russian dialogue. Real Russian, they assumed.
He wishes to telephone the Russian embassy in Washington.
Phonetic gibberish, it turned out. Now, Natalie Wood caught it immediately. Wood was cast as Russian translator Tatiana because she was the daughter of Russian immigrants and spoke the language fluently at home. Director Ronald Neame confirmed it. He cast her specifically for that heritage, then worked with a dialect coach to sharpen a Leningrad accent on top of it. When Wood sat down with the script, she found pages of mangled, nonsensical Russian that would have been laughable to any native speaker. She spent her breaks quietly correcting it, essentially serving as the film's unofficial Russian language consultant. Nobody put her name in that credit. She did it anyway. Her accent wasn't Hollywood Russian, it was the real thing, and she made sure the words matched. 3. The mud that nearly won the climax of the film takes place in a flooded New York City subway tunnel. And the flood was 80,000 gallons of bentonite, a dense clay-based drilling mud used in industrial construction. It was not pleasant. Sean Connery contracted a respiratory condition during filming and was shut down for 2 days. Karl Malden was buried by the mud twice. Natalie Wood was nearly pulled into one of the industrial pumps pushing the mixture through the set. Every actor stuffed their ears with cotton wool between takes and had their eyes washed out after each one. The sequence is the most physically punishing scene in any 1970s disaster film. Not because of what's on screen, because of what the cast was actually enduring to get it there. Connery later said it was among the most miserable experiences of his professional life. The mud won almost every round. 4. The VFX firing squad. 3 separate special effects supervisors were hired on Meteor. All 3 were fired. Frank van der Veer came first. After a full year of work, everything he produced was deemed unusable and thrown out entirely. William Cruise and Margot Anderson replaced him, spent what remained of the effects budget, and were also fired. Then Paul Kassler and Rob Balak were brought in 2 months before the release date, given almost nothing to work with, and told to finish the film. They did what they could. The Hong Kong tidal wave was shot in Los Angeles using an improvised water tank and cardboard cutout buildings. The Swiss avalanche was recycled footage lifted directly from a different film, Avalanche, made the previous year. The nuclear missile miniatures were 22 inches long, far too small to photograph convincingly. The film's release date was pushed back 4 months. It still wasn't enough. What you see on screen isn't incompetence. It's the result of a production that burned through its entire effects budget 3 times over. 5. The script that nobody agreed on, Meteor, went through a screenwriting war before a single frame was shot. Oscar winner Edmund H. North wrote the first draft. Connery and Neame hated it. A rewrite by Stephen Bach also failed. Stanley Mann was then brought in to start completely from scratch, which he did, creating an almost entirely new script including the female lead character Tatiana, who didn't exist in North's version. This created a full Writers Guild of America dispute over screen credit. Neame was so angry he took out a trade advertisement publicly declaring that the finished screenplay bore almost no resemblance to North's original work. The Guild ruled anyway that both North and Mann would share credit. The irony, the film's best element, the Connery and Wood dynamic, came entirely from Mann's version. The character North wrote wasn't even in the room. 6. The MIT Blueprint. The film wasn't science fiction, it was based on a real plan. In 1967, students and professors at MIT produced a detailed report called Project Icarus, a serious academic study of what humanity would actually do if a large asteroid were detected on a collision course with Earth. The conclusion: launch nuclear missiles from orbit, combine the firepower of multiple platforms. Hope it's enough. Sound familiar? That report sat on a shelf for a decade. Then it became the backbone of Meteor's entire premise. The filmmakers acknowledged it in the end credits, thanking MIT directly for their cooperation. 40 years later, NASA launched the DART mission, a real spacecraft designed to test whether crashing something into an asteroid could alter its trajectory. The science fiction of 1979 had become the actual plan. Project Icarus wasn't a movie idea. It was homework. 7. The premiere in a crater. The studio wanted a premiere. Someone decided that wasn't dramatic enough. Meteor premiered to the press on the floor of Barringer Crater outside Winslow, Arizona, the best preserved meteor impact site on Earth. Connery, Wood, and Martin Landau attended, along with the producers and representatives from American International Pictures. They screened a disaster movie about a meteor inside an actual meteor crater. It was either the most perfectly conceived publicity event in Hollywood history or the most elaborately staged metaphor for what was about to happen to the film's box office performance. Possibly both. AIP President Samuel Z. Arkoff called Meteor the most difficult picture in the company's history. It was not a compliment. 8. The sound nobody expected. Meteor was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Sound. Given everything else about the production, this remains the film's most surprising fact. The sound design team built the Meteor's impact from the ground up using real-world recording rather than synthesizers or stock sound effects. The low-frequency rumble that accompanies the destruction sequences was constructed specifically to be felt as much as heard, designed to shake theater seats and register in the body before the brain processed it. That nomination came while critics were calling the effects laughable and the script a bore. The sound department had quietly done extraordinary work inside a film falling apart around them. 1 Oscar nomination, 1 department that delivered. The rest of the production was not as fortunate. 9. Henry Fonda never met Sean Connery. Henry Fonda played the President of the United States. Sean Connery played the scientist trying to save the world. They never shared a frame. All of Fonda's scenes were shot separately on a static Oval Office set in Los Angeles, completely isolated from the main production. He was 74 years old during filming, appearing in this, The Swarm, and City on Fire within the same stretch of years. A run of disaster films that did his legacy no favors and his bank account significant ones. 2 of the film's biggest names, positioned as the central dramatic axis of the story, filmed their roles on different schedules in different rooms without ever meeting. The tension between their characters that the film relies on was constructed entirely in the editing room. Fonda's performance appears in 8 minutes of screen time. Connery said he never spoke to him. 10. The St. Louis buildings. The destruction of New York City used buildings that were already gone. The demolition footage showing structures collapsing in the film's climax was shot at a housing project in St. Louis, Missouri, that had been demolished several years earlier. The footage was licensed and repurposed. New York City never had anything blown up for this movie. This was not uncommon in the disaster film era, but the scale of the deception here is notable. The film's most dramatic visual payoff, the centerpiece destruction sequence audiences were sold on, was stock footage of a different city's urban renewal project from years before. Nobody on the poster mentioned St. Louis. 11. The film that killed a genre Meteor didn't just fail at the box office, it helped close one. By 1979, the disaster movie genre that had produced the Poseidon Adventure, the Towering Inferno, and Earthquake was already losing momentum. Meteor, expensive, slow, effects-challenged, and arriving 2 years after Star Wars had redefined what spectacle meant, landed like a signal flare that the era was over. The Concorde. Airport 79 and When Time Ran Out followed in rapid succession. Within 18 months, the genre had effectively collapsed. Ronald Neame had directed The Poseidon Adventure, one of the greatest disaster films ever made. 7 years later, he directed the film that many critics mark as the genre's tombstone. Same director, opposite outcomes. One film launched the era, the other ended it. 12. The Cardboard Hong Kong. The tidal wave that devastates Hong Kong in the film's midsection was supposed to be a massive practical effects achievement. It was shot in a parking lot in Los Angeles. The effects team built an improvised water tank using whatever materials they had left after 2 previous effects crews had burned through the budget. The Hong Kong skyline was represented by cardboard cutout buildings placed inside the tank. The dump tank itself was leaking from poor construction before shooting even began. The sequence in the finished film lasts under 90 seconds. It cost the production enormous time and resources to create something that looks, to put it generously, like a parking lot in Los Angeles with wet cardboard in it. The film was co-produced with Run Run Shaw of Shaw Brothers Studios specifically because Hong Kong was a major setting. Shaw's investment helped finance the film. His city was represented by cardboard. 13. Connery's roughest patch Meteor arrived at the lowest point of Sean Connery's career. After leaving the Bond franchise and stumbling through a series of commercial and critical misfires in the mid-70s, Connery took this role during a stretch where he was, by his own later admission, struggling to find parts that matched his ambition. He was notoriously difficult on set, pushing back against the script repeatedly and publicly expressing his dissatisfaction with the material. The mud sequence didn't help. What makes this stranger in retrospect is what came next. Within 3 years, Connery was in Time Bandits and The Man Who Would Be King. Within 5, he was rebuilding his career entirely. Within a decade, he won an Oscar for The Untouchables. Meteor is the low water mark between 2 very different versions of the same career. He earned his paycheck in bentonite. 14. The only line that mattered. The film ends with 2 words. After the meteor is stopped, after the mud, after the survival, after everything. The Americans and Soviets who spent the whole film navigating politics, mistrust, and the near end of civilization look at each other. Good luck. That's it. No speeches, no declarations, no argument about who saved the world. Just 2 scientists covered in mud, acknowledging each other and going home. For a film made in 1979 during the Cold War. And with the world's 2 superpowers in genuine nuclear standoff, that handshake ending was as political as anything on screen that year. It didn't celebrate one side. It didn't offer a lesson. It just said, "We did this together. Now go." In a decade full of disaster movies that ended with heroes and crowds and swelling music, Meteor ended with 2 words and a quiet exit. It was the best scene in the film. It cost nothing to shoot. So what lands hardest for you? The 3 effects teams fired one after another while the release clock was ticking? Natalie Wood fixing the Russian dialogue that nobody else could read? Or the fact that the destruction of New York City was actually St. Louis, and New York never knew? Drop it in the comments. subscribe, and hit the bell. More classic sci-fi and disaster secrets coming soon. See you in the next one.